Marriott, and you might even visit the hotel beforehand and say, we've got these educators coming in and we want to make sure they're comfortable. And do you have internet in the room? And ask some of those questions. And often it's included in the lower priced chain hotels, where in the upscale hotels you pay $10 a day to use the internet. And local telephone calls are $1.50. And the other places, everything's free. So that would be just a word from somebody that does these visits all the time. Let's go back to page XV. During the visit, there are some responsibilities for the principal. Provide a meeting room. In consultation with the chair, arrange meetings of appropriate groups. Consider having substitute teachers or volunteers available to facilitate interviews with teachers. A nice touch. If the teacher thought they had a release period that they weren't expecting, it makes them very happy during the interview if somebody else is watching their class. And you've arranged for that as the principal. Coordinate with the chair to arrange a meeting of the faculty and staff, available board members, and student representatives for the exit report. I've been at schools where the whole school came to the exit report. Parents, students, I mean, we had 300 at the exit report. I've been at other places where the schedule just doesn't allow and we get most of the faculty, and I always invite the students, you know, like, what are you guys doing here and all this? So come on, we're gonna give a report on the last day we're here. And so it varies, but I would say do what's comfortable for you. If you have students that are interested in the process, I think it's great to invite them. It's kind of boring. We read through a report that lasts usually about 30 or 40 minutes. But it does give them a shot at what other people think about their school. And often we reference the student questionnaire and the parent questionnaire. And so the exit interview is something that is worth thinking about as you're preparing for the visit. Typically, the visiting committee doesn't want to hang around a long time after the exit interview. What happens with the report is that typically on the last day of the visit, several hours before the final reading of the report, the visiting committee will go through the report with the coordinating committee. And that's the opportunity that you have to say, wait a minute, you're barking up the wrong tree. You got this all wrong. You know, here's the real scoop. And so there is an opportunity for you as the coordinating committee or the administrative team to have input with the visiting committee about their report. But typically when the final report is read to the world, there isn't any debate about that. So be ready to listen carefully at that pre-read of your report to make sure that what's in there accurately reflects what the committee has seen. And if you think that they've got it wrong, that's the time to talk to the visiting committee. And I try to schedule those before lunch. If the exit report is at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, I try and schedule those before lunch if I can, so that we can revise our report if we need to after that meeting with the administration. But I've been at places where, you know, we read our report and there were ushers who ushered us out to our cars and off we went. In WASC, that's the way they do it. In the Regional Accrediting Association, they don't want you to stick around and try and explain your report. They arrange for people to usher you off campus and off you go. You drop your bomb and fly away. But that can work either way. Often, I know I've been at places where I've had personal friends and we'll stick around and visit a little while. Now, it used to be that we don't expect the visiting committee to share their recommendation for a term of accreditation. Don't expect that. It happens now some days that a visiting committee chair will share their recommendation for a term. But the reason we haven't done that in the past is that it is merely a recommendation. The Accrediting Commission, AAA, has a meeting every summer. It's going to be next week, August 31 or whatever, in Washington, D.C., and they review all the reports that have been written that year. And that group, the Commission on Accreditation, determines what the term will be. The visiting committee makes a term recommendation, but it's simply a recommendation to that commission. So it's a little embarrassing if the committee chair says, we're going to recommend a 6-year term, and the letter comes from the accrediting commission and it says 3. Doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. In WASC, where I am, we had a very embarrassing situation with a visit that happened this spring where the visiting committee chair, partway through the visit, the principal went to the visiting committee chair and said, hey, what do you think it's going to be? And the visiting committee chair said, I think it's going to be a 6. And when they got to vote with the committee, it was a 3. And that is going to lead to an appeal. In WASC, you pay money and you can appeal it, and that would be a grounds to have the term recommendation reversed. And so it can be a dangerous thing to share that term, but it does happen sometimes. I would say don't expect it. Don't expect it. Often the chair will, after the visit, will go with the principal in private and say, you know, it was a good visit and I think you're going to be happy with your term, and thanks a lot. And that's the kind of visit you could expect. Or it was kind of a rough visit, and you know, we think you're on the way, but you're not quite there yet. You might hear something like that. But typically you won't know what the recommendation is of the visiting committee to the commission at the time of the visit. Questions, comments? Oh, then after the visit, on page XV there, you can see there are some responsibilities for the principal after the visit. You need to present and distribute the final visiting committee report, file copies of the self-study in various places, review the visiting committee report with the school board, faculty, and staff for implementation of action plans and recommendations, and review annually the visiting committee report with the school board and faculty and so on. And this is where it breaks down a lot of times. As a principal, I tried to at least once a year, sometimes twice a year, when I had a board meeting every month, to bring the self-study or the visiting committee report to the board and just say, remember, we saw this before, this is where we are, this is what we've worked on, this is what we still got to do, we've got 2 years left until the next visit, I want you to be aware of this. Often, if you do that, the board, which is responsible for funding your school, has an opportunity to say, wait a minute, we better get on this one that's going to cost some money. We better start finding the money to do this, because the visiting committee's coming back in 2 years, and we don't want to look bad when they show up. So it's helpful not only for you, but for the board to keep this material in front of the board between the visit on a regular basis, at least once a year. Now, we require annual reports to be submitted, so that's a great time to do that. When you fill out an annual report, share that with the board and say, here's where we are. We've done this, we've still got this to do. Here's a status report. How are we going to plan for the future? How are we going to get this done during this term? All right, more than you ever wanted to know about that. There's a checklist for the school board on page XV and 2 little i's. A very important timeline and checklist. The checklist and timeline for the coordinating committee. You can see that for a senior academy, we suggest that 8 to 10 months prior to the visit, you go to work. In WASC, they prefer that they start the spring before, so 12 months before. You get your committees in place before the summer happens. People can be thinking about that over the summer. Yeah. But we say 8 to 10 months that you should study and discuss the criteria, get your study groups together, that kind of thing, and begin to plan for this. So we've given a detailed timeline and checklist for you to prepare for a visiting committee. Again, we wanted to provide as much as we could that would assist you in preparing for these visits. The next page has a checklist for study committee members. That's the smaller groups that are working in specific subject areas or standards. Then we come to a general instruction page. And throughout the document, we inserted instruction pages before the standards section, before the subject area section, before the profile section. We've inserted instruction pages that you'll just take out when you fill out your self-study. But we wanted to include those all the way along so that you have prompts for what you need to do. The next page has a supplementary materials inventory. Again, I would say, make sure you've got those documents in the room. It's not fun as a visiting committee chair to say, well, where are the supplementary documents? Well, we didn't think about that. It doesn't bode well for the school. You have the stuff in the room for the visiting committee. Then we come to the school profile and progress report and philosophy. This is the section that the principal typically completes. There are instructions for this section, and you can see that the principal, with assistance from the coordinating committee on page 2, completes this report. It's information about the constituency, financial data. It summarizes the staff, both administrative and faculty and staff positions, talks a lot about their endorsements and those kinds of things. The students, it profiles the student population, student follow-up data, standardized testing data. And by the way, I'll say as an aside now, with No Child Left Behind in the public sector, assessment and evaluation of performance is a really big deal. And I would suggest that you encourage your staff to have more than just the ITBS or ITED tests available. Any evaluations that you're doing of student progress that can verify that your students are doing well in school, add that material. It's not required, but it will strengthen your report. Okay, so since this is a K-12 document, it goes all the way through grade 1 and has the ITBS scores, textbook audit, and then all your curriculum courses. You're asked to list the course titles, the names of the teachers, and whether they're endorsed by the denomination, what the enrollment is in each class, how many minutes they are in session. So all this stuff, we even asked some questions about your philanthropy program at your school at the end of the profile section. Then we come to the progress report. A couple of words to help you with the progress report. Often when I see a progress report, it says done. Well, that's okay, but if you could just add a short paragraph or something that said how you did it, or how long it took, or those kinds of things really, I think, add credibility to a program and to a report. If you can, if you say in progress, say what you got done and what you still have to do. Be open with us before we get there. We'll find it out when we get there anyway. So be as transparent as you can and as informative as you can as you refer to this. This has the progress report will ask you to comment on your progress on the school-wide improvement action plans that were left by the last group. And it's important for you, again, to be specific about what you've gotten done and what you're still working on. Then we come to the philosophy and goals section. We ask you to list the statement of the school's mission. We have the J2E curriculum goals listed there, and then we ask you to provide specific goals that you have adopted for your school. So it's okay, we give you the prompt of the J2E goals, but we hope that you've thought about what are some of the specific things you want your school to have. Then we come to the standards section. There are 10 standards, and the format is that we give you an overview of the standard and then ask you to make ratings on a scale of 1 to 4 on several indicators of implementation for that standard. So you get together with your study committees, with your coordinating committee, and you rate your school on a scale of 1 to 4, not met, partially met, met, or exceptionally met. Then you give kind of an overall rating for that standard. In some cases, there are more than 2 indicators, and so you kind of review all those indicators that you had and say, okay, as a comprehensive score in this area, we'll give ourselves a 3. We've met this. Not exceptionally, but we've met this standard. Then on the next page, and we had a big debate about this on the committee, how much space to allow for a narrative. The first draft had 2 or 3 lines on a PDF. We've since, with Larry's wisdom, added a whole page behind each of the standards for you to write a narrative related to that standard with what you've done regarding that standard. You don't have to fill the whole page up, but we wanted to provide enough space